The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Alt. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Wisdom of the Idiots by Idries Shah. This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Ihsan Wali's Test. Ihsan Wali, when he suddenly appeared in Syria from Turkestan, showed that he had a remarkable range of techniques, called by externalists his wisdoms, with which he was able to effect a forward movement in the then sluggish study of Sufism. He found, for instance, that Sufi schools had become organizations bound together by traditionalism and by regard for one master at the expense of the teachings of the Sufis as a whole. They worked with exercises and ideas which rightly belonged to other people, other times, and even other places. The Wali's way of approaching this problem greatly impressed those who, while ignorant of his methods, believed that they should help him. They included Mustafa Ali Darazi, Ali Mohammed Husseini, and Tawil Termidi, whose reports survive. He told them, "To the outward eye, viewing these collections of people, even by the reality that they have become flour mills rather than schools, the ones to approach and the ones which have no capacity to learn are impossible to differentiate. I have, as you know, shown you that all are defective at present for the work, but which of them is capable of revival?" He pointed to a row of palm trees which were suffering from the heat. "If water is limited, which tree do we water? I have shown you that they are withered, something you did not realize before. Now I will show you a way to test whether individual trees may revive or not." Ihsan Wali, as his demonstration, now met all the sheikhs of the repetitious schools, most of whom welcomed him kindly and indicated that they would be pleased to receive his help in re-establishing the teachings. He gave them no assurances. Separating himself from them, he then wrote to each one in the following vein: "I have something of surpassing importance to say to you, and nothing at all to say through you. This means that I have to be permitted to address your followers directly. If you will allow this, I shall make my methods known. If, on the other hand, you do not allow it, I will be able eventually to address these people indirectly. But in that way you will have by refusal alienated yourself from me, and I will not be able to address myself to you. Since I have a responsibility either to all of you or to none, I cannot at the beginning use you as a channel when I am able to approach you directly. Since you have developed such a close affinity with your community, I must regard you as an essential member of the community, and cannot therefore treat you separately." He explained to his helpers that those sheikhs who were willing to regard themselves as pupils just as much as they regarded their own students as disciples would be the ones who headed schools which could be revivified. Some sheikhs responded with understanding, and others reacted with intense distrust, overtly or covertly, for Ihsan Wali's approach. Although he welcomed the understanding of the ones who regarded themselves as his pupils and as no different from their own smallest disciples in this respect, he grieved for the withered plants. Ali Mohammed Husseini said, "Do we then sorrow for what has been shown to be dead?" He answered, "They are not all dead. It is only their suspicion which makes them behave as if they were dead." No sooner had he said this than some sheikhs of the divided schools, as if by innerly perceptive hearing, changed their attitudes and laid their turbans at his feet. Majzoub, one of the formerly perplexed sheikhs, said subsequently, "I felt as if something oppressive had lifted, and I knew then that it was my fear and suspicion." But Ihsan Wali said, "It was the prayers of the withering sheikhs themselves, stronger than their fears and suspicions, which caused them to come to us and receive what we had to bring them. The merit is in fact all theirs. How can we have merit for doing something which we know? We have in the past earned merit for exercising virtues. But in this instance it is by pushing athwart their natures, full of rust, that they have polished the mirror of understanding." By this means did the suspicious sheikhs retain their importance in their own schools and gain greater respect from their own disciples. The few who remained estranged found that their pupils were more and more inclining towards confusion of mind or adherence to the wali, though he wrote to them to say, "I do not enroll your pupils, not out of courtesy to you, but because without the understanding of the whole body, the limb cannot function. If you fear loss of disciples through my presence, therefore, do not fear, for I cannot help them, and will always say so. But I have fear for your eventual situation." The withered plants, except for a few, did not respond to this kindly rain. Today, of course, there is no trace on earth of the followers of those sheikhs who did not come to the methods of Ihsan Wali during his Syrian residence. Hidden Miracles. Someone asked Fuad Ashik, a senior disciple of Bahuddin Naqshband's, "Can you tell me why it is that the Maulana conceals his miracles? I have often seen him in places when others have testified that they were with him at the time elsewhere. Similarly, when he cures someone by means of prayer, he may say, 'It would have happened in any case.' People who ask him favours or who are favoured by his interest gain great advantages in the world, but he denies his influence, or else attributes such events to coincidence or even to the work of others." Fuad said, "I have myself observed this many times. Indeed, since I am so often with him, it is now a matter of my daily experience. The reason is that miracles are the operation of extraordinary service. They are not done to make people happy or sad. If they impress, this impressing is going to make the childish person credulous and excited, instead of making him learn something." Entry into a Sufi Circle. If you read, if you practice, you may qualify for a Sufi circle. If you only read, you will not. If you think you have had experiences upon which you can build, you may not qualify. Words alone do not communicate. There must be something prepared of which the words are a hint. Practice alone does not perfect humanity. Man needs the contact of the truth, initially in a form which will help him. What is suitable and unexceptionable for one time and place is generally limited, unsuitable, or a hindrance in another time and place. This is true in the search, and also in many fields of ordinary life. Hope and work so that you may be acceptable to a Sufi circle. Do not try to judge it or its members unless you are free from greed. Greed makes you believe things you would not normally believe. It makes you disbelieve things you should ordinarily believe. If you cannot overcome greed, exercise it only where you can see it working. Do not bring it into the circle of the initiates. Nazir al-Qazwini, The Solitary Remarks. A Story of Ibn Halim. There were two men of great renown as teachers of the right path. Ibn Halim relates that he went first to see one of them, whose name was Pir Ardashir of Qazwin. He said to Pir Ardashir, "Will you advise me as to what to do and what not to do?" The Pir said, "Yes, but I will give you such instructions as you will find very hard to carry out, since they will go against your preferences, even if these preferences are sometimes for hardship." Ibn Halim spent some months with Pir Ardashir and found that his teaching was indeed hard for him. Although Pir Ardashir's former disciples were now famed throughout the world as enlightened teachers, he could not stand the changes, the uncertainties, and the disciplines placed upon him. At length he applied to the Pir for permission to leave, and travelled to the tekia of the second teacher, Murshid Amali. He asked the Murshid, "Would you place upon me burdens which I might find next to intolerable?" Amali replied, "I would not place upon you such burdens." Ibn Halim asked, "Will you then accept me as a disciple?" The Murshid answered, "Not until you have asked me why my training would not be so onerous as that of Pir Ardashir." Ibn Halim asked, "Why would it not be so onerous?" The Murshid told him, "Because I would not care for you and your real well-being like Ardashir cared for you. Therefore you must not now ask me to accept you as a disciple." The Woman Sufi and the Queen. A certain woman of the disgraced family of the Umayyah had become a Sufi, and she went to visit the queen of the household of al-Mahdi, who had replaced the Umayyah. The queen was herself known as a woman of delicacy and compassion. When she saw the emaciated and ragged figure of the pauper Umayyan princess at her door, she asked her to come in, and prepared to give words of comfort and such presents as would relieve her evident want. But no sooner had the Umayyan princess said, "I am a daughter of the family of Umayyah," than the queen forgot all her charity and shouted, "A woman of the accursed Umayyah! You have come, no doubt, to beg for alms, forgetting what things your menfolk did to our family, how they oppressed them and treated them without mercy, leaving them no recourse except for God." "No," said the Umayyan princess. "I did not come for sympathy, forgiveness, or money. I came to see whether the family of al-Mahdi had learned to behave from their predecessors who could not, the ruthless sons of Umayyah, or whether the conduct you deplore was a contagion which would certainly end in the downfall of those who contract it." The Umayyan princess walked away, and was not afterwards anywhere to be found. But we have this story only from the words of the Queen of al-Mahdi, and so it may have been the cause of some improvement in human behaviour somewhere. This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.